This episode of the Total Soccer Show is brought to you by RxBar. For 25% off your first order, visit rxbar.com/soccer and enter the promo code SOCCER at checkout. Once again, that's rxbar.com/soccer and the promo code SOCCER at checkout. Now, on with today's show. Hello and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I am Taylor Rockwell. I know me doing the intro throws some people off. I apologize for that. But Daryl and his wife are in Michigan for his wife's grandmother's funeral. So if you wanted to send Daryl a kind tweet or email, I'm sure he would appreciate it. But Daryl is going to be gone for about a week, which means I will be taking over hosting duties until he Skypes in when he's able to do so. But today, instead of Daryl, I've got a person from his area, if not his country. We've called up Graham Hunter. Graham is a person that Daryl and I have both respected and admired for a very long time from afar, so it was very exciting to get to speak to him. He's written two books, one about Barcelona, one about the Spanish national team when it went ahead and won the Euros, the World Cup and the Euros. Decent achievement there. But I called him to talk about La Liga, but more specifically, we talked about Barcelona, the preseason they've had, the transfers they've had, and kind of the situation within the club. Then Real Madrid, some of their transfer activity as well. Obviously, Ronaldo coming up, but the Luka Modric saga, Keylor Navas, and Thibaut Courtois, how they're going to get along, all of that and much more. So, without further ado, here is me talking to Graham. Joining me on the line, I've got my friend and yours, the legend himself, Mr. Graham Hunter. Graham, thank you so much for joining me today.
Taylor, I don't recognize myself, but let's push on anyway. That description's too strong, man.
Well, you're in the middle of it seems like a bit of travel. Is this standard for you, or is this a pretty hectic time with La Liga about to kick off?
There's a mix of both in that when La Liga opens, it's phenomenally exciting. There's opportunities galore, and at this stage of the season, particularly having come back from TV producing Spain in the World Cup and then working on without them until the end of the World Cup, it is a hectic time. It's pressurized, and you're just finding your feet after, which is why sometimes I write with great sympathy for the players and the managers, because you're finding your feet, mentally and physically after energy-wise after pretty much an 11-month season. You have about 10 days free, and then it's imperative to be catching up with whatever La Liga is about to bring you, not even once it starts. But the accelerated difference is thanks to La Liga. I have far more co-commentating work live at matches in stadia around Spain than for a few seasons. People know that quite often television companies will have you co-commentate off the television feed. Well, in this instance, that's not what we're doing, and therefore you're right. This coming weekend is very busy. There's a lot of travel, great games, to which I'm looking forward to enormously. But in the correspondence you and I had that the rest of the audience don't know anything about, it does just so happen that I'm interviewing footballers around North and West Europe over the next 4 or 5 days following the two live matches, and then the review show that I guess people that listen right across the United States and North America, I guess you can pick that up in a number of different ways. But La Liga television is part of what you buy into. If you're a broadcaster and you buy La Liga live games, you also get La Liga television. And Monday afternoon, for example, is a review show that I'll be doing with Simon Hanley and an ex-pro from La Liga. And therefore, it's a packed agenda. But, I never, ever either forget, nor am I shy to say that it's a dream, it's a privilege. And anybody who's ever heard me talk about football will know that I'm not making up when I say it still gigantically excites me, and I'll never lose that. And also, I'm not embarrassed by that either.
Well, that's very good. That's why we have you on the show, to be enthusiastic and to explain La Liga a little bit. So I wanted to start with the champions. They missed out on Griezmann, supposedly Pogba. I'm still not sure if that was real or not. They brought in...
Well, let me stop
yeah,
you there.
Go ahead.
I'll make this a parenthesis, and then you come back on me, because I don't want to take over and dominate.
No, go ahead.
It's easy rather than just to refer to gossip. It's easy to say with clarity. The situation at United is not what Pogba wants. The relationship with Mourinho is not terrific. It ebbed and flowed and went up and down. And for my interpretation of the facts, there's easy blame on each side. But despite the fact that I'm an acknowledged critic who'd like to be able to appreciate Mourinho much more for his achievements, rather than to be a little bit bogged down in his manner, how he's changed, I think, for the worse. I appreciate that we're talking about huge talent here. And last season, I thought that perhaps while there was some immaturity on Pogba's part, I didn't necessarily think that he was being man-managed in the right way. Mourinho's tone has, changed pretty dramatically. His words of praise after United's opening win against Leicester were, if you understand Mourinho, were not only accurate about Pogba's performance, but conciliatory. But the key thing for those who want to know the truth of what you're talking about is that Barcelona absolutely do believe, and I'm telling you, I think it's via Minarelli, the agent of Paul Pogba, that Paul Pogba, if Barcelona make a sterling effort for him, that Pogba wants to come to the Camp Nou. That's what Barca believe. And therefore, they haven't made a bid. We're not talking about something that was on their agenda. I'm pointing out that they have been brought an opportunity. There's an opportunity cost, which is that they don't have the money. They know that it will be a battle royale to convince Manchester United now that the English signing market has closed. And it's for reasons like these that you see hints that some at Barcelona's board level would consider cashing in on Dembele, which would be, in my book, an outrageous error, in order to generate the cash to throw money at Manchester United and say, we'll take Pogba off your hands. And that's what's going on. And until the 31st, when the Spanish market closes, even though we've seen Barca's president and other board members trying to dampen down the fires, and I think rightly so, particularly after Dembele's goal at the weekend to win the Super Cup, although I think that the way you profile and the way you assess Dembele has nothing to do with one brilliant goal. You must understand that you've got a Mustang, not a thoroughbred, and your job is to work on him. I think overall the deal's not going to happen this summer, but I think Barca are laying down a marker for Pogba's future. I think that the relationship between Mourinho and Pogba is not terrific. It's oil and water. And therefore, you're dealing with a subject that is going to be heated, I think, for another couple of weeks.
Lovely. So I am a United fan, and it feels a little bit like The Godfather of, like, just when we got out of the David De Gea Sagba, we get pulled right back into the Paul Pogba Sagba.
Mino Raiola pulled you back in, correct.
Well, so actually, I wanted to ask you about one thing you just said there. So you said it would be an outrageous error to get rid of Ousmane Dembele. Why do you feel that? I know you've said the thoroughbred Mustang analogy, but what do you see in him? What do you think Barcelona could develop there?
Well, if the first way to construct any argument about it, whether people buy into it or not, is to say that if Barcelona had been less naive and less asleep, then they wouldn't be in this situation. Because, number one, there was an intermediary involved who you may or may not know of. He's of my generation. He's a friend of mine, Simon Stainrod, a maverick attacking midfielder for Aston Villa and QPR, and who very nearly joined Barcelona under Terry Venables. At any rate, he was intermediary for the kid when he was at Rennes, when Rennes were on the point of selling Dembele to Manchester City, and Patrick Vieira was handling the operation. Vieira went a little bit dopey on the whole thing and just assumed that City would win over everybody. And at that point, Barcelona could have signed Dembele from Rennes, put him into their academy and brought him through, bedded him in, helped him learn Spanish, helped him understand what the club was about while Xavi was still at it, while Iniesta was still closer to his peak. That would have been a great operation. It would have been a great operation when Rennes eventually sold him for a very cheap price. I mean, I think a price ascending to somewhere in the region of 18, 19 million euros. At that point, if Barcelona scouting was good, they buy him. Okay, that's history, but they didn't. And when they buy him from Dortmund, Taylor, the price is extraordinary, 100 plus incentives that could take it to 115, 120, because they haven't known that Neymar's going. Because even though Neymar renegotiated his contract the October before he leaves for Paris and says, I will not take more wages so that you can put my buyout clause up from 222 million. Well, everybody knows when a treasured employee is saying, I don't want more wages and I'm not increasing the difficulty of me leaving, You start planning for him leaving, and they didn't. And 8 months later, in the summer, when he goes and Paris pay the 222 in millions of euros, they have to spend close to half of that on Dembele. So I build that argument, Taylor, because people who are looking at Dembele and don't understand what they've got are looking at him through a prism of 100 million euros. Now, if this kid had come through the Barca Academy and showed the pace, the technique, the association skills with other players, the goals, the fact that he's a world champion with France. If you stripped away the 100 million and this was a guy who'd been in the Barca Academy for 5 years, Catalan football would be, I don't want to use in Midsummer on Fire, it would be incendiary with joy. You know, they'd be going, we have found and we have groomed the new Messi. His flaws must be worked on and we must turn a blind eye to any immaturity because he's a genius. And well, he's still the same guy, irrespective of whether he spent 5 years in the academy or they spent 100 million euros on him because they were stupid enough to put themselves in a seller's market. The fact is, if you strip all that away, Dembele may be raw, maybe a little bit sulky, maybe has missed a deadline of a training commencement or a tactical meeting by being late a couple of times, which I can assure you the original Ronaldo did regularly at Football Club Barcelona. Yeah, he's just turned 21. You know, he's scored in a Champions League quarterfinal 24 hours after the bus that he was on was attacked by shrapnel bombs. Mm-hmm. He's won the German Cup by scoring and making one in a semi-final against Bayern Munich where Dortmund were eliminated and yet won. He scored the opening goal in the German Cup final. He's played more minutes in this World Cup while winning than Dugarry or Patrick Vieira or Robert Pires did when winning the World Cup in 1998. This is a guy who's won the league with Barcelona, who since March has been playing with more authority and maturity. He played in the cup final. He won the Super Cup. I mean, really, honestly, if anybody is stupid enough not to realize that the owner club, whether that owner club was Washington, D.C., Toronto, Crewe Alexandria, or Blackburn Rovers owning Dembele, the job is to develop him, to work on him, to teach him, and to turn that Mustang into what would be a thoroughbred who, if you can harness him properly, teach him properly, then over the next 24 months, he's going to become a Ballon d'Or candidate. Now, that is something that it is not easy to buy, and I challenge it. And I'm not talking from the basis of being either, you know, on Dembele's pay scheme or a Barca fan, because I'm neither. But objectively, if you look at it and what the player can offer, how much he's developed so far, Messi's age, Iniesta's departure, and I genuinely ask anybody listening to this podcast, where is there another Dembele in the world? Mbappe's different. I don't think there is another Dembele anywhere in the world right now. Vinicius may become so, but he's 3 years younger. They have got a gigantic, high-quality property on their hands, and if they mismanage him, then hell mend them. They're idiots.
I mean, you are on an American podcast, so I feel like there's lots of Americans screaming into their earbuds Christian Pulisic. But yeah, I take your point. I don't think he's quite.
No, I know Christian very well, and I'm not going to say more than this. But I'm sitting in the house of his representative right now, and his representative is my daughter's godfather. Now, Christian is a player of enormous ability. He's somebody who played with Dembele. He's somebody who will be, without any question, a target for the leading Premier League sides and Bayern Munich over the next 12 months. I also appreciate that he's a creator, that he's a scorer, that he can go on to become the US national team leader, whether with the armband or spiritual. I think they've just made a captaincy decision this summer. But with due respect to Christian, and I'm not talking about ability or level. There's no comparison between him and Dembele. Christian is much more like, say, Robert Pires, for example. Christian can really pick a pass, is unselfish, is already a disciplined athlete. His behaviour off the pitch and on the pitch stands contrast with Dembele, in that Dembele is still very raw. I think in his domestic life right now, his parents' life, there's a little bit of upheaval. I don't think that he's quite as disciplined in his dietary regime as Christian is for sure. And also I think that they're two distinct player types. I genuinely do. I'm not being pedantic. If you watch Dembele, if those who maybe see more of Pulisic and haven't studied Dembele closely, you're comparing a greyhound with a cobra. You know, the ability for Dembele to stand stationary with the ball at his feet and to be surrounded by three men and to disappear off in a cloud of smoke where you don't know how he's got the ball through them or how he's got away from them so quickly. And his out-and-out dribbling ability and acceptance of risk is just different from Christian's huge abilities. They're a different species, Taylor, I'd argue.
More from my interview with Graham in just a moment, but first I wanted to let you know that today's episode of the Total Soccer Show is brought to you by RX Bar. RX Bar is a whole food protein bar. What does that mean? Well, it means their bars are made with real whole ingredients. That makes sense. That's why they label their core ingredients, egg whites, dates, and nuts, on the front of the package, and then the flavor components, the other little extras, on the back. We had RX Bars on our tour, and they were lifesavers. You can only eat so many continental breakfasts of waffles, cereal, and toast, the whole food pyramid right there, before you need a little bit of variety. RX Bar has lots of different flavors, lots of healthy flavors at that, to keep you going, keep you energized, keep you full. I'm partial to the mango pineapple. My wife likes the chocolate sea salt. Daryl, I believe, enjoys the mint chocolate. If none of those appeal, no problem, because they've got 11 other flavors, 14 different flavor varieties to choose from RX Bar. They're also excellent for road trips. We found that out as well. There's always that point in the road trip when you're like a little bit hungry, but not completely hungry, and you kind of talk yourself into getting fast food. RX Bar will fill you right up, and then you won't have to have that moment when you look at the empty wrapper and the empty fry container and think, what have I done? That's because RX Bars are good for you. They taste great, but they're also gluten-free, soy-free, dairy-free, no artificial colors, artificial flavors, preservatives, or fillers. None of that can be said for fast food. So, if you want to try RX Bars or you're interested in having one yourself, for 25% off your first order, visit rxbar.com/soccer and enter the promo code soccer at checkout. One more time, for 25% off, go to rxbar.com/soccer and enter the promo code soccer at checkout. Thank you to RX Bar for sponsoring today's episode. Now back to my conversation with Graham. So then you did have Dembele. I would agree with that, by the way, and I will happily take Robert Pires. That would be fine with me for Christian Pulisic, even as a Man United fan.
Viva Hershey.
Well said. But Dembele did start the Super Cup game against Sevilla. How similar do you think that lineup we saw against Sevilla will be to the kind of regular starting 11 for Barcelona this season?
No, I truthfully don't know. I don't think it's my job. As much as I do know about the current scene as closely associated with the development of this club as I've been over the last 17 years because I live in the city, they've done things in this market, Taylor, which means I don't know. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is, does Coutinho start high left or midfield left? Mm-hmm. I hope it's midfield left. I think there's an obvious reason for that. Does Malcolm, who scored last night against Boca Juniors in the Gamper tournament, a nice left-footed shot, does he start an inverted winger playing on the right and cutting into his left, or does he play in the left? And if he plays in the left, does he play left midfield or left high? Okay, there's some questions. Next, not only is there already a superfluity of talent in Barcelona's midfield, they are actively in the process of not only courting Pogba, but they have tried several times to try and buy De Jong from Ajax. Really? He's a very, in inverted commas, Barca-style player. Pass, move, open things up. Look for triangles of passes. He's an archetypical Barca player. Yet, what we've got is, the two Arthurs to go with a Malcolm. It sounds like the plot of an Agatha Christie novel. But you've got King Arthur coming with a dodgy knee, age 31, and undoubtedly a reputation for how he likes to live off the pitch. But Vidal is a warrior, a winner, somebody who might have been an antidote to the mauling in Rome, to the mauling in Juventus in Turin a year before, 3-0, the Paris Saint-Germain mauling. Arturo Vidal has been bought partly because he's experienced, because he's a leader, but partly because he's a warrior. Now, that's different from Arturo, the Brazilian Arturo Melo, much younger, much smaller, but very much a pivotal player who's give me the ball, give me the ball. He's the anti-Brazilian player. He's not even Dunga, who was much more negative. He's somebody who is happy to be at the back end of the midfield triangle, shuttling play along, offering to receive all the time, often adventurous in making the passes forward by 5, 10, 15 meters. But this sort of catalytic player who wants to keep the other team running around the pitch and opening spaces for Barca. And therefore, if you throw in Busquets and Rakitic, who had his best ever season for Barca over the last 12 months and helped steer Croatia to the World Cup, you've got 4, maybe 5 players who you think, well, they're automatic starters. Well, you don't get 5 automatic starters and 3 up front. You don't get 5 automatic starters in midfield and 2 up front. So I can't answer your question until, and I think this is crucial, certain players demonstrate their worth to the midfield on an ongoing basis. And one player, Vidal, demonstrates his fitness.
All right. So lots of Barcelona there. I do want to talk about other teams, but one question that I had for you before we move on is it feels a little bit like, I think a lot of times, I'll speak for myself here, won't put this on other people. I think I have this idea of Barcelona as this well-run machine to some extent, and it's interesting to hear you talk a little bit because it sounds like it's a bit more haphazard with the way they approach the transfer market and when they deal with players departing. Would you say that that's a fair way to categorize what they've done this summer, or do you think their signings have been a bit more strategic?
No, worse than that. I think your point is not only accurate, it's well expressed and well made in terms of timing. And I think that, over the last few seasons, they've had 3 or 4 football directors, Zubizarreta, Robert, who's been sacked. They've now got Pep Segura working with the newly appointed Eric Abidal. They're just simply by putting a sort of template on their buying and selling over the last few seasons, you'd have answered your question without me. The research done on Andre Gomes wasn't sufficient. The research done on Paco Alcacer wasn't sufficient. The types of players who've been allowed to escape, whether that be Isco or Asensio or Rodrigo, who's gone from Villarreal to Atletico Madrid, you can go through a number of Yerry who they've made a profit, but they made a profit by good fortune. Who in their right minds felt that was a Barca signing given how they play? No, just no.
I mean, Everton, but that's the only one.
Yeah, no, but I mean, given how Barca play, because Everton play differently, the Premier League is different. If you're looking for a footballer who might be broken against, so Barcelona's defence often is on the ball and you're playing the ball out. And Yerry is adequate at that. Not Barca level, but he's adequate. What Barca's defence has to suffer all the time is long periods where they're either doing nothing or trying to be positionally correct and circulating the ball. And then suddenly it can be hell. A blitzkrieg where the ball's given away, a midfielder's caught out of position, and 2 or 3 or 4 might be pouring against 2 or 3 of you. Now, Yerry Mina's mobility, his positional sense, his experience, all of those, I think we're going to continue to be regularly exposed. And there was one high point where my argument, was proven beyond any argument, which was the 5-4 defeat on the penultimate weekend of the league when Barca were going for a 100% record of not being beaten all season while being champions. They hadn't lost to Levante in Valencia since 1964, and they conceded 5 and were beaten 5-4. And Yerry Mina was awful. Mm-hmm. So going back to your bigger point, that's a bit micro right now, but macro, I'm sad to say that, a proper director of football, cued, clued in and queued up to what the tom-tom drums are saying, would never have been surprised by Neymar saying, yeah, I'm off. Paris Saint-Germain are going to pay my buyout clause and I'm gone. Being prepared for that, persuading him to stay, or having a proper strategy for what to do. Barcelona are no longer the side that you heard about from the point at which Joan Laporta won the elections in 2003. Chiqui Begiristain was the director of football. Johan Cruyff was the eminence grise behind the scenes. Pep Guardiola and Rijkaard were very informed and wise about the majority of players that they traded in or out. And frankly, although they throw money at players, they have bought well. There is no argument that on occasions Zubizarreta bought well. The level of, I think you talked about order and a well-oiled machine and strategizing. That what happens when you don't have a philosophy is that falls away. And in the years from 89 until 96, they had the Cruyff philosophy. And then the Cruyff philosophy stayed on in the youth system from then until the golden era. And right through the golden era until Sandro Rosé won the elections in 2010, the Cruyff theory dominated. It's progressively, first by Rosell and then secondly by Bartomeu, who's then made up with the Cruyff family to a degree. It was expunged. They thought we can do it better. They literally took the golden goose and went, no, I think we'd rather a squirrel laying golden eggs. And they just screwed the whole thing up. They went, we know better. You're like, well, yeah, you get squirrel eggs now, boys. And that's what Yerry Mina and Paco Alcacer and Andrew Gomez turned out to be, squirrel eggs. And therefore, and Douglas, in all seriousness. So where we're at now is that you have a less philosophy-based club. Xavi's moved on, Puyol's gone, Villa's gone, Pep's gone, Begirisstein's gone, Johan Cruyff sadly died. The board is not driven by Cruyff principles. The Cantera, the youth system, is producing differently and overall less well. And therefore, what you get is that although Barcelona still have the motto "Més que un club," more than a club, in terms of one of the key things that made them more than a club, the Cruyff philosophy, I'm afraid it's in decay.
Well, that's a lot of Barcelona, and it's all wonderful. It really is. That was fascinating. Thank you. But I did want to talk very quickly about Real Madrid because I know time is of the essence. Were you surprised by that move of Ronaldo to Juve? Because for me, again, it was one of those that's being reported. He wants a new contract. He wants better terms. And then suddenly he's in Italy. What did you make of that move?
Well, I don't want to be clever. I want to say, 60% not surprised because I'll tell you exactly the reason. Not this summer, but last summer I helped organise some players for a testimonial, Michael Carrick's testimonial. I brought 4 or 5 players across from Spain to play in it. And one of the participants, not the ones I brought, said to me, at Cardiff before the Champions League final against Juventus, I went to see Cristiano in his hotel room and he said to me, If I could sign for Manchester United tomorrow, I would, if they were in the Mediterranean. I'm not looked after at Real Madrid. I'd like to move. I'd move back to Manchester United instantly, except I cannot stand that weather. And he said, at Real Madrid, I have never been treated the way I should be. I've never been handled like I was at Manchester United. I'm not satisfied. This wasn't a leak via George Mendes. This wasn't a leak via a friendly newspaper. This wasn't him bitching and moaning for more money. He was not happy. So to then run through a season where he wins the Champions League and instantly when my friend Rodrigo Fayez interviews him on the pitch in Kiev and asks a couple of questions and then is kind of struggling for the payoff question. And I know Rodrigo well. He kind of just goes, well, this era has to go on and on. And Cristiano goes, well, I don't know. It's been fun while I've been at Real Madrid, but... And Rodrigo goes, what? Are you saying? And Cristiano goes, well, I've got something to announce. It. Bingo, on the pitch afterwards. It's clear something is happening. I've got something to tell you all soon. And where the surprise comes in, I hadn't anticipated how ready Juventus were financially and in organising terms, nor... how well young Agnelli had been cultivating Mendes or Ronaldo. I'd noticed on the night that he scored against Juve in the quarterfinal in Turin with that wonderful overhead kick that it really moved him, touched him when the Juventus fans applauded him for that goal against them. So that there was an operation so ready, so advanced, so powerful. Yeah, that surprised me a little bit. That he was willing to leave at the right moment for the right money, particularly after the tax fine. No, that didn't surprise me at all.
I just want you to know that when the Glazers inevitably try to move Manchester United to Tampa, I'm going to blame you for putting it on the weather. You started this. That's what's happened.
Apologies about that. Well, I think the old expression is "don't kill the messenger," right? Was that
I suppose.
The whole thing about the Greeks and marathon and whatever. It wasn't me that sent the bad message. Although, if you'd asked me about the weather in Manchester, I'd have said, "Yeah, Tampa."
And I mean, you're in Scotland right now, right? So I feel like that says something.
No. I'm in the Costa Brava.
Okay.
Beautiful, sunny Mediterranean Spain.
Okay, that makes a big difference. Well, then, all right, so we've talked about Ronaldo. I wanted to ask then, so do you think it's a similar situation with Luka Modric in the sense that maybe there is fire where there's smoke, or whichever way that's supposed to go?
I believe it's simpler in that there's no way that for Croatian it's not tempting, but who grew up, in his era, that it's not tempting to look at Inter and its history and the restoring project that's going on there. There's no way that at an age where you've kind of done everything at Real Madrid and you've come a very close second in the World Cup final, there's no way that that's not tempting. Ordinarily, if you hadn't achieved things at Madrid and somebody was saying to you, go to Inter Milan, you say, you're going to need some sort of psychological help. What are you talking about? But any athlete, whether it's baseball, NFL, ice hockey or soccer, once they reach the point where many of their ambitions at a particular franchise or club have been sated, it's actually often, not always, unhealthy to stay. Now, Modric, to throw into that bonfire the petrol that Modric doesn't feel he's properly rewarded. He should be, based on performance in the absence of Ronaldo, he should be either second top or equal top paid now, and he's not. And that, in my opinion, is mostly what it's about. I think that the idea of moving to Inter Milan was seductive to him. Mm-hmm. I think that the better tax regime, there's been new laws introduced in Italy that help the mega rich in terms of the tax burden. Real Madrid players are finding it hard, given the way that some of their deals are structured, not to fall foul of the Spanish tax laws. And therefore, no, it wasn't made up, but he doesn't feel about Real Madrid the way that Ronaldo does. And on balance, it's not a guarantee, Madrid fans, on balance, I think that Modric stays. But was it concocted? No. Is he absolutely ruling out the idea of going, no, I don't think so. And although Madrid do not want to lose him in a summer where they've lost Zidane and Ronaldo, and in a summer where they haven't yet been able to rebuild in a powerful way, do you want to lose probably the most popular player there amongst the fans, one of the two or three most influential players there? No, you don't. So this summer, boy, oh boy, I don't see Inter succeeding, and I see Modric being willing to stay. But if the same offer came up next February, March, I think Modric and Inter and Real Madrid would sit down and talk about it, and then it would happen.
Understood. All right, one more transfer question for you. I'm still kind of confused by this. Thibaut Courtois has come in. I'm hoping you can kind of help me understand, why is it that Madrid have been pursuing a goalkeeper for so long, even with Keylor Navas playing as well as he has been? Is it just that maybe he's not at that tip-top tier that they're looking for? Is it that he doesn't have the name recognition? Is it something else entirely? What is it that Keylor Navas doesn't have that made them want to go out and get that goalkeeper?
It's a lovely sort of Molotov cocktail of all of those things, in that there's a great disparity between what the president thinks of Keylor Navas and what Zidane and the players thought of Navas. They adore him. They fought for him on more than one occasion, and he's gone on to justify that again and again. He has been the reason for the affection is that he's been a player who rescues the rest of the team regularly. Mm-hmm. Now, whether because he is, he's committed Christian, a very family man. He's not a great one for marketing, self-marketing or promotion or advertising. And as such, name recognition, yeah, you may be right. Costa Ricans, that's something that's massively important to the European continent? No. And therefore, Florentino has been looking around and saying, where do I get somebody who's going to make a statement to buy? He's not finding that easy up front or in midfield. But I'm certain, Taylor, and the listeners, your podcast listeners will know on Total Football. What does Florentino love to do? He loves to stick it up Barcelona, and he loves to stick it up Atletico Madrid. Where did Courtois gain fame in Spain? At Atletico Madrid. The idea of signing Courtois has been there since he actually left Atleti to go back to Chelsea, having been absolutely brilliant at the Calderon and for Cholo Simeone. The idea that they can parade Courtois and Florentino without actually raising two digits, can mentally sit two fingers up to Atleti fans, that's catnip for him, baby. That is... Honestly, that's his party fix. So, and let's not make a mistake. Albeit that I'm defensive of Navas because Navas is a proven winner and a brilliant professional. He's got proper competition because Courtois is that good. And I only suspect, but I think that Lopetegui, the new coach, ex-goalkeeper as he is, may give Keylor Navas Copa del Rey and Champions League and Courtois the league. Or maybe Courtois gets Champions League and League, and Keylor gets to fight on for a season, keeping goal in the Copa del Rey. I think an accommodation will be found, and competition-wise, it should be only to Madrid's benefit.
All right. Well, Graham Hunter, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you've got a lot on your plate today. I did want to say one thing before you go. Listeners, if you don't subscribe to Graham's podcast, The Big Interview, correct?
Yes, it is. Thank you. This is a surprise. I didn't know this was coming. Thank you.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, it's excellent. It's wonderful. Again, for like the fifth time in the show, Man United, I love the one with Michael Carrick, learning all about like the box and everything. Fascinating stuff. So Graham's interviews are great. But if people want to hear more from you, where can they find you?
Right at home, and if people are nice enough, they can phone me up and I'll just chat. Look, right. if you like to read me, then read The Athletic, read ESPN, FC, and whoever is the carrier for Spanish La Liga football in North America, they will be picking up on La Liga television the Monday review and Friday preview, and the Wednesday chat show and the Tuesday analysis show that La Liga Television provides to whoever has bought the rights to Spanish soccer in the US. That's where you'll be able to find me.
All right. Well, Graham Hunter, thank you again. We will hopefully talk to you again as the season progresses.
Enjoyed it, Taylor. Thanks, man.